Well, got another log to get up on the mill. This one measures about 11.5 inches on the small end, and you really got to base everything you do off the small end. It is one of the disadvantages of milling from the big end, which I normally don't prefer to do. I like to mill from the big end when the logs are really big and I know I'm going to have a hard time getting past it. But when I don't have that issue, I prefer to mill from the small end, which makes it a lot easier to decide what you're going to do and how you're going to get there. In this case, at 11.5 inches, really, I'm looking at about an 8-inch cant. So what I'm thinking to myself is I need about 7.25 inches to get 2 3 5/8 cants to make 2x4s out of. If I could take an inch, inch and a half out of the center to cut that juvenile wood and the pith out, maybe, just maybe, I could get those cants. So I might try something a little different today. See if I can sneak out 2 3 5/8 cants and box out the heart at the same time on a log that only measures 11.5 inches. It's going to be tough. Let's see if I can do it.
All right, if you're curious, what was going on right there is sometimes when you roll the log, a little bark will get in between the side supports and the log itself, or even the bunks and the log itself. When that happens, and you've got to pay attention, then you just got to stop, kind of rock the log back, and then pull that out, clean your side supports off. Sometimes you can just run them down and back up again. Sometimes you got to go there by hand and clean them out. It's kind of the same as when you'll see me lift the log up, and I'll just brush the bunks off, because if you get anything under the log, it's not going to sit right, and you're not going to make perfectly square cants or boards. So that's all that was going on there. And while I'm at it, folks, I would really love it if you could do me a favor and hit that like button for me. Of course, you gotta like the video. I hope you do. But if you hit that like button, it'll just help the video out, spread it around a little bit, let others know maybe they might like it and they can check it too. So if you do that, hey, I'd appreciate it. Thank you very much for that. All right, now you're gonna see something that I don't know you've actually seen before. Of course, everybody's seen me pull slabs off, and if you've noticed that I'm kind of babying those as I pull them off, my back isn't really fully healed, folks. I have had a couple of ablations, which does get rid of, well, they burn the nerves out, and so the nerves can't cause you pain, but I do still have some other back problems that cause me a lot of pain. So if you've kind of noticed that I'm not walking at full speed here, well, it's a bit rough carrying things. So, but you know what? We're here to make lumber, not talk about my back. Now, what you haven't seen before probably is this. I got to pull out my bark spudger and get rid of this bark. And this is one of the things that I see a lot on ponderosa pine that's been down a while. And in a previous video, I think I mentioned these trees were felled earlier in the spring and then decked up in April. Then I had problems with the mill, and so it took all this time to get back there and actually mill these up. So here we are several months later, and ponderosa pine typically does this. The bark just starts to come off of it. That can be a bit of a challenge when you're trying to roll a log around, because your log roller will actually catch the bark and it'll slip, it'll push the bark off. And the log clamp itself can get caught up with it. The bark gets underneath the log. As it falls off, it gets on the bunks, or as you just saw, it'll get into the side supports and you won't be able to make that log square. And it really doesn't matter whether you believe in a 90 or a 180 degree roll, that bark's gonna get in the way on both of those. So you're either gonna roll your side supports out of the way or lift it up on your rollers and get rid of that bark so that you can get back to milling. And that's all it is. Just using a bark spudger here, that's what I'm showing you. And, you know, the bark spudger is just one of those things that's handy to have around the mill when you're milling older ponderosa pine. Now, I just got to remove a little bit more from under it. You can see that bark sitting there underneath there. So we're going to get that out of the way. Then, once we get that out of the way, we're just back to milling. And keep an eye on what I was talking about earlier. This log really should barely give me, you know, between an 8 and a 9 inch cant. 12 inches technically only gives you about an 8 inch cant, but I'm actually going to try to get better than 9 out of it. And the trick here is that, yes, the small end is a lot smaller, but there's enough taper that I know I'll lose some at that small end. But if I can take an inch or an inch and a half out of the center and box that hard out, then all of the 2x4s I'm going to make out of this log will come from either side of the juvenile wood, which will make them better 2x4s. So that's all we're doing. So now that we got this thing just about cleaned up, got a little bit more to go, we'll drop her down, we'll set up, and away we go. We'll get her milled up into separate cants, start knocking them down. Let's get to it. Okay, here we are. We're making that 3 5/8 inch cant. Now that means I had the simple set on 3 3/4. Now I tell you, you're gonna notice I went a little deep on my flitch. I'm trying to sneak out as many 2x as I can. And in this case, well, probably should have gone with a 1 inch board instead of an 1 5/8, which was my plan, but I didn't. So, took this 3 5/8 cant, dropped it an 1 3/4, and then went ahead and took that one out, which does box in the pith anyway, most of the heart. You'll see it here. Right there, you can see that that one cant is just above the pith, about a 1/2 inch to 3/4 of an inch. Got a little bit of juvenile wood in there. Might cost me, but I think I'll be okay. Drop your comments down below. Let me know what you think. Did I do a good enough job there? Should I done a little better? One thing I will tell you is that when I'm milling, I'm not going to spend a lot of time pulling tape measures out and measuring things. Now, if I'm only doing one log, sure, I can do that. I could take all day if I want. But when you're trying to get a whole bunch of logs done, you just don't have that much time to do it. And I realize that some are going to say, nonsense, I never do that. Well, I believe in the real world, and in the real world, hey, you know what? People make mistakes. I'm not going to say this was a mistake. Again, drop your comment down below. Let me know what you think. But to me, it wasn't a mistake. It just wasn't perfect. But then again, nothing's perfect in the world, folks. So, anyway, now what I've got to do is I've got to take that 1 5/8 essentially flitch that I boxed the heart in. I got to get it out of between these two cants. So it's not exactly the fastest method of milling, but I can make some 2x out of that. So I've got to get it out of the cants, then I can squish the cants back together and then rip them down to the deck. But what you're going to do now is we're going to set the simple set at the right starting height so that we don't need to make any corrections from now to the deck. No skim cuts, no corrections. We're going to start here and go chunk, 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 chunk right down to the deck. So let's get her done.
All right, folks, we got that one done. Couple things. One, I was worried more about trying to get 2, 3 and 5/8 cants and not hit the pith and box out the heart, and trying to show you doing that I didn't read my stress very well. So those are going to be crowned. Oh well. However, I did do what I was looking to do, minus about 1/4 of an inch. I just had my calculations off slightly, and I think part of the issue is sometimes on this ponderosa pine, that pith wanders a little bit. So you measure one end, you measure the other end, you calculate off one end, the other end's not quite the same. Oh well, whatever. Ponderosa pine, thankfully, is very forgiving and will be fine. But I was able to take 2, 3 and 5/8 cants out of either side of that pith and heartwood, that juvenile wood that you don't want. Managed to do it. It just took a little bit of calculating. Okay, if I'm gonna take 7 1/4 plus an 1/8 for the kerf and another 1.5 inches or so out of that, what does that add up to? Start at the top, get it all set up, and on that third face, before rolling it again, it's just cut, roll, and then cut, roll her up, knock her down. Now I did take that center piece out because I'm gonna knock those 3 and 5/8 cants down in 1 3/4 inches, which of course will leave me 1 5/8 on the simple set. I don't wanna do that with that centerpiece because I can make a couple 2x4s out of that as well, because I took out just over 1.5 inches out of the center, 1 5/8. Worked out just perfect. So, missed the heart, boxed it into one piece, forgot about it, moved on. Now, I got more to do. So thanks for watching. Hey, I got another video for you right here to check out if you like. Appreciate you watching. Y'all have a great day. The old Jarhead out.